Princess Lyria stood on the crystal balcony overlooking the floating gardens of Ethoria, her delicate fingers tracing patterns in the air that produced only the faintest purple shimmer. Around her, the royal palace pulsed with vibrant energy as her sisters effortlessly conjured crystalline structures that captured and refracted the twin suns' light. Their laughter echoed through the chamber, a painful reminder of her inadequacy. "Still nothing substantial?" Queen Isolda's voice cut through the air like a blade. The queen's tall figure approached, her own hands surrounded by complex geometric patterns of pure energy. Lyria lowered her eyes, the slight violet hue of her skin deepening with shame. "I've been practicing every day, Mother, and yet you fail where even children succeed." Isolda sighed, dismissing the radiant structures around her with a casual wave. "The council meeting is in an hour. You will not attend." "But I've studied all the diplomatic protocols." "Protocols mean nothing without power," Isolda interrupted. "Our people respect strength, and the humans respect our power." What would they think, seeing the third princess unable to manifest even a simple energy construct? The queen turned away, her iridescent robes catching the light. "I've made a decision that will benefit us all." Lyria felt her stomach tighten. "What decision?" "The human delegation from Meridian seeks a more permanent alliance. Their lead diplomat, Nikolai Varden, has agreed to a marriage bond." The words struck like physical blows. "You're sending me away? To live among humans?" "I'm securing our southern border and giving you purpose," Isolda replied, her tone softening fractionally. "Your sensitivity to emotions may serve you better among humans. They're quite driven by such things." "You mean my empathic abilities? The ones you've called useless my entire life?" Lyria's voice trembled. "Mind your tone," Isolda warned. "This marriage will happen in 3 days. The preparations are already underway." Lyria's mind raced through possibilities of escape, rebellion, or persuasion, but each pathway seemed closed. Her sisters would never support her. They'd always seen her as the weak link. Her father had passed years ago, the only one who'd valued her gentler gifts. "May I at least meet him before?" she asked quietly. "He arrives tomorrow. You'll have 1 day to become acquainted." The queen paused at the doorway. "Lyria, this isn't punishment. The council agrees this is the best use of your particular talents." After her mother departed, Lyria sank to the floor, allowing the tears to flow freely. Through the window, she could see the farthest reaches of Ethoria's floating archipelago, where the magical barrier separated their realm from the human world below. She had only seen humans in holographic projections, their rounded ears, their varied skin tones lacking any purple hue, their complete absence of the bioluminescent patterns that adorned Ethorian skin. That night, as attendants packed her belongings, Lyria stared at the ceremonial bonding bracelets laid out for the upcoming ceremony. They were beautiful silver and crystal designed to look like simple jewelry to human eyes, but encoded with protective enchantments. Even in casting her out, her mother ensured she would be safe.
Yes.
"Is he kind, at least?" Lyria asked her handmaiden, Thea. Thea hesitated. "I heard the humans speak softly and brings gifts of their ocean treasures. Beyond that, princess, I cannot say." Lyria nodded, watching the twin moons rise above the crystal spires. Soon, she would leave the only home she'd known to become a bridge between worlds, or perhaps just a forgotten token. Traded for peace, the human city of Meridian sprawled along the coastline. A chaotic collection of stone and wood structures, so unlike the geometric precision of Ethoria. Lyria stood on the balcony of her new home, breathing in the unfamiliar scent of salt and fish that permeated the air. 3 weeks had passed since the hasty ceremony that bound her to Nikolai Varden, and still, everything felt foreign. "The harbor view is considered quite desirable here," came Nikolai's voice from behind her. "Though I imagine it pales compared to the floating gardens you described." Lyria turned to face her husband. He was tall for a human, with sun-bronzed skin and eyes the color of stormy seas. During their brief introduction in Ethoria, she'd found him polite but unremarkable. Now, in his element, she noticed the quiet confidence in his movements and the gentle consideration in his gaze. "Different," she offered, pulling her shawl tighter to hide the faint bioluminescent patterns that appeared on her purple skin when she felt uncomfortable. The water doesn't sing here. Nikolai approached slowly, respecting her space as he always did. Perhaps not in ways you can hear yet, but the fishermen claim they can read the ocean's moods. Our people seem to navigate well enough without magic, she acknowledged reluctantly. We adapt. A small smile touched his lips. Speaking of which, I brought something. He extended a small wooden box. It might help you feel more at home. Inside lay a delicate pendant of sea glass and silver that captured light in a way reminiscent of Ethorian crystals. It wasn't magical, but the craftsmanship showed thoughtful attention. The glassmaker used materials that echo the color of your, well, you. He gestured vaguely toward her violet complexion, a slight flush coloring his cheeks. Thank you, she said, genuinely touched by the gesture. I've brought little of beauty from my world. I disagree, he said quietly, then cleared his throat. The Harbor Festival begins tomorrow. Would you consider attending? It might help the people see you as more than just a diplomatic arrangement. That night, Lyria wrote a letter to her youngest sister that she knew would never be sent. Queen Isolde had made it clear that communication would be limited to official diplomatic channels. As she wrote of the strange customs and foods, she found herself including small details about Nikolai's patience when explaining human customs. The books of poetry he kept by his bedside, how he'd given her a separate chamber without question. The following evening, dressed in human attire, with a scarf arranged to partially conceal her distinctly non-human features, Lyria walked beside Nikolai through the festival. Lanterns illuminated the harbor, and music unlike anything in Ethoria filled the air, organic, unpredictable, and strangely moving. Everyone's staring, she whispered. They're curious, Nikolai replied. Many have never seen an Ethorian before, but they'll learn to see past the differences, as I am. When an elderly woman approached, Lyria tensed, but the woman merely offered a fried sweet pastry. Welcome to Meridian, my lady. My grandson is alive because of the healing crystals your people provided last winter. As they continued through the festival, more citizens approached with cautious welcomes. Lyria began to sense the emotional currents around her curiosity. Yes, but also hope and a surprising lack of fear. Her empathic abilities, considered useless in Ethoria, allowed her to navigate the complex social dynamics more smoothly than expected. Later, watching fireworks explode over the harbor, Lyria found herself standing closer to Nikolai than propriety might dictate. His hand brushed against hers, and after a moment's hesitation, she allowed their fingers to intertwine. You're trembling, he observed. I've never been touched this way, she admitted. Among her people, casual contact was rare. Energy fields could interfere uncomfortably. Should I stop? She tightened her grip slightly. No, it's pleasant. For the first time since leaving Ethoria, Lyria felt something beyond resentment and loss. It wasn't happiness, not yet. But perhaps the beginning of acceptance, and something else she wasn't quite ready to name. The storm arrived without warning, catching Meridian's fishing fleet far from shore. Lyria stood at the harbor's edge, the wind whipping her hair as she watched black clouds gather with supernatural speed. Around her, families of fishermen gathered with lanterns and worried expressions. The harbor masters ordered signal fires lit along the cliffs, Nikolai explained, joining her with a heavy cloak that he draped around her shoulders. But in this weather, ... Lyria closed her eyes, extending her senses outward. In Ethoria, such attempts had always yielded disappointing results compared to her sister's crystal manipulations. But here, something different happened. The emotional currents of the frightened families around her combined with the storm's energy in unexpected ways, creating patterns she could somehow perceive. They're heading toward the northern reefs, she whispered, eyes still closed. The currents are pulling them into danger. Nikolai stared at her. How could you possibly know that? I can feel it, she said, struggling to explain. Like threads of emotion and energy intertwining with the water patterns. Without hesitation, Nikolai turned to the harbor master. Redirect the signal fires north. Near Serpent's Teeth? That makes no sense, the grizzled man argued. The storm would push them south. Trust me, Nikolai insisted, with a glance at Lyria. To her surprise, the harbor master nodded reluctantly. "On your authority, Counselor Varden." Hours later, as the storm subsided, the fishing boats returned, all of them, guided by the northern signal fires that had warned them away from hidden dangers. As the families reunited on the docks, Lyria found herself surrounded by grateful townspeople. "How did you know?" Nikolai asked later that night as they sat before the fire in their shared living space. Closer than they had ever been before, Lyria's hands created patterns in the air, leaving faint purple traces. "In Ethoria, I could never master crystal manipulation, but I could always sense energy patterns and emotions. It was considered decorative at best, useless at worst." "It saved lives today," he said softly. His hand reached for hers, stopping the self-conscious gestures. "Nothing about you is useless, Lyria." Something shifted between them in that moment. His eyes held hers with an intensity that sent warmth spreading through her body. When his hand gently touched her cheek, she didn't pull away. "May I?" he whispered. Her answer was to lean forward, closing the distance between them. His lips were warm against hers, the sensation entirely new and unexpectedly pleasant. The kiss deepened, and Lyria felt the bioluminescent patterns across her skin brighten with emotion. Nikolai drew back slightly, his eyes taking in the glowing patterns with wonder. "You're beautiful," he breathed, tracing the luminescent swirls on her arm with gentle fingers. Later, as they lay together in the darkness, Lyria's head resting on Nikolai's chest, she realized something had fundamentally changed. This man, this human, saw value in the very aspects of herself that her own people had dismissed. In his arms, she didn't feel like a failure or a diplomatic token. She felt whole. "I never expected this," she admitted softly. "When my mother sent me here, I thought it was punishment."
Ow.
His fingers traced patterns along her spine. Lyria smiled against his skin. "Now I'm not so sure she didn't accidentally give me a gift instead," as if in response to her words. The faint purple glow of her skin intensified, casting the room in a gentle lavender light that seemed to pulse in rhythm with their heartbeats. The beginning of something neither Ithorian nor human, but uniquely their own. 6 months into her life in Meridian, Lyria stood barefoot in the tidal pools, her purple skin luminescent in the dawn light. Around her, a small group of human children watched in awe as she guided their hands through the shallow water. "Feel the rhythm," she instructed softly. "The ocean breathes, just like you do." Small faces scrunched in concentration as tiny hands splashed. One girl, Mira, suddenly gasped as the water beneath her palms formed a perfect, miniature whirlpool that danced for several seconds before dissolving. "It did magic," she exclaimed. "You found the pattern," Lyria corrected gently. "That's something anyone can learn with practice." From the shoreline, Nikolai observed the lesson with a mixture of pride and amazement. What had begun as Lyria's personal exploration of her abilities had transformed into something remarkable, a school where she taught human children to sense the energetic patterns in nature that her people had always taken for granted. Later, as they walked hand in hand along the beach, Nikolai marveled at how far they'd come. "The Harbor Council has requested your presence at their next meeting," he informed her. "They want to discuss implementing your early warning system for the fishing fleets." Lyria's eyes widened. "They're taking it seriously?" 3 months without casualties speaks for itself." He squeezed her hand. "You've saved more lives than any treaty could." As sunset painted the sky in hues that matched her skin, Lyria felt a sudden, sharp pang in her chest, a sensation that had become increasingly frequent. "Something's wrong in Ethoria," she whispered. Nikolai's expression grew concerned. "The same feeling as before?" She nodded. Through their intimate connection, her empathic abilities had expanded in unexpected ways. The faint emotional thread that still connected her to her homeland occasionally brought troubling sensations. "Perhaps it's time we requested a formal audience with your mother," Nikolai suggested carefully. "The trade agreement is due for renewal." Lyria tensed. "She hasn't responded to any of our messages, and perhaps we should deliver one in person." That night, their lovemaking carried an edge of urgency. As they moved together in the moonlight filtering through the windows, the luminescent patterns on Lyria's skin flowed outward, mingling with the air around them in a way she'd never experienced in Ethoria. Nikolai's body responded as if attuned to her energy, their connection transcending physical boundaries. Something new is happening. She whispered against his lips, as waves of pleasure and energy pulsed between them. In the aftermath, they lay entwined, a soft purple glow surrounding them both. Nikolai's skin had begun to develop faint, matching patterns, temporary echoes of her own luminescence that lingered for hours after their intimate contact. "We're creating something neither world has seen before," Nikolai murmured. Tracing the brightest pattern over her heart, Lyria placed her hand over his. "I'm afraid of what my mother would think of this. Perhaps it's exactly what both our worlds need." Meanwhile, in the crystal spires of Ithoria, Queen Isolde stood in the Chamber of Visions, her face drawn with exhaustion. Around her, the most powerful crystal mages worked, frantically to reinforce the deteriorating energy barriers that had protected their realm for centuries. "Harmonic disturbances are increasing," reported Counselor Thorn. "Our traditional methods are failing." Isolde's hands shook slightly as she manipulated complex energy patterns. "Where is Seraphina? Her crystalline control should be bolstering the eastern quadrant. The princess has exhausted herself. The healers are attending to her now." The queen closed her eyes briefly. All three of her remaining daughters had worked themselves to the brink of collapse, trying to maintain the barriers. Pure crystalline magic, once seemingly limitless, was proving insufficient against the strange new disruptions in the energy fields. "And what of the reports from the human territories?" she asked quietly. The counselor hesitated. "Confirmed, Your Majesty. The coastal regions, near where Princess Lyria resides, show no signs of the disturbances." "How is this possible?" Isolde demanded, though she already feared she knew the answer. "We don't know, but the evidence suggests that some form of harmonizing energy is protecting those areas. Energy unlike any we've documented before." As the chamber emptied, Isolde approached the sacred viewing crystal, activating it with a complex gesture. The image that formed showed Lyria standing on a human beach, hands extended toward the water. What shocked the queen wasn't her daughter's actions, but the energy. Signatures surrounding her, neither purely Ithorian nor completely absent like a human's would be, but something new and strangely powerful, for the first time in decades. Queen Isolde felt the cold weight of profound regret. The delegation from Ithoria arrived in Meridian without warning, materializing on the central pier in a flash of crystalline light that sent the morning market into momentary panic. At their center stood Queen Isolde, her regal bearing unmistakable, despite the evident fatigue in her posture. Lyria, alerted by the harbor bells, rushed to the pier with Nikolai close behind. She stopped short at the sight of her mother, a tumult of emotions rendering her momentarily speechless. Daughter Isolde acknowledged, her voice carrying none of its usual imperious tone. Mother Lyria replied cautiously, "This is unexpected. Necessity often is." The queen's eyes moved to Nikolai, then to their joined hands, where faint matching luminescent patterns pulsed. "I see much has changed." The formal reception hastily arranged in the Harbor Council chambers did little to ease the tension. Seated across from her mother, Lyria sensed the emotional currents swirling around the queen, pride warring with desperation, judgment tempered by something unfamiliar. Humility. "The barriers are failing," Isolde finally stated plainly. "Our crystal magic cannot sustain them alone." Nikolai leaned forward. "What does this mean for both our realms? Without the barriers, the energy disruptions will affect both worlds. Storms, tectonic instability, magical anomalies." The queen's eyes fixed on Lyria. "Yet these disturbances are noticeably absent along your coastline." Lyria felt the weight of her mother's expectation. "You believe I'm responsible somehow?" "I believe," Isolde said carefully, "that I may have been wrong about many things." That evening, Lyria brought her mother to witness the sunset gathering at the tidal pools, where humans of all ages now practiced the harmonizing techniques she'd developed. Children and elders alike stood in shallow water, their movements creating subtle patterns that resonated with the natural energy flows. "They have no innate magic," Isolde observed, bewildered. "They don't need it," Lyria explained. "They're not manipulating energy, they're aligning with it." Understanding dawned slowly on the queen's face as she watched a fisherman guide his young daughter's hands, creating ripples that matched the rhythm of the incoming tide. The barriers between our worlds were never meant to be walls, Lyria continued. They should be membranes, permeable, adaptive. Later that night, in the privacy of the house she shared with Nikolai, Lyria faced her mother directly. You sent me away because you thought I was a failure. Isolde winced at the bluntness. I sent you away because I didn't understand your gift. She hesitated. Because I couldn't see beyond the traditions that define my own power. And now I am here, asking for your help. The words clearly cost the proud queen greatly. Not as a ruler, but as a mother who made a grievous error in judgment. When Isolde reached out tentatively, Lyria didn't pull away. The moment their hands touched, a cascade of purple light flowed between them, tides of misunderstanding and hurt transforming into something new. I need to show you something, Lyria said, guiding her mother toward the bedroom where Nikolai waited. Together the three formed a circle, hands joined. Lyria and Nikolai demonstrated the harmonizing technique they'd discovered through their intimate connection, melding of empathic resonance and human intuition that created stable, adaptive energy patterns. This is what's protecting the coastline, Lyria explained as the purple light enveloped them. Not crystal manipulation, but harmonization. For the first time in Lyria's memory, tears formed in her mother's eyes. The old text spoke of this, the merging of different energies to create balance. We thought it merely legend. 3 days later, as dawn broke over Meridian, Lyria stood between her two worlds, Nikolai on one side, her mother on the other. Together, they led a gathering of both humans and a delegation of Ithorians in a harmonizing ceremony that sent ripples of balanced energy outward from the coast. It will take time to implement throughout both realms, Lyria cautioned. Years of teaching and practice. We have that time now, thanks to you, Isolde acknowledged. As the ceremony concluded, she took her daughter's hands. I came seeking salvation for Ithoria, but I found something more precious, the daughter I failed to see clearly. Perhaps we both needed distance to find clarity, Lyria suggested gently. As Queen Isolde prepared to return to Ithoria, she extended an unexpected invitation. The palace would welcome both of you for the solstice celebration. Nikolai bowed respectfully. We would be honored, Your Majesty. When the Ithorian delegation departed in their crystalline light, Lyria remained on the shore with Nikolai, watching the sunrise paint the horizon in shades of purple and gold. Do you regret any of it? He asked softly. Being sent here? Lyria smiled, placing his hand over the gentle curve of her abdomen where a new life had just begun to form one. That would truly bridge both worlds. How could I regret finding exactly where I belong? She leaned into his embrace as the morning light illuminated the faint, matching patterns that now permanently adorned both their skin. Sometimes being cast away is really just being sent home. Above them, the sky between worlds shimmered with new possibility, as the barriers transformed from walls into bridges, much like the princess once deemed useless who had discovered her true power not in magical crystals, but in the most powerful magic of all, connection.